Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I have often said on this platform that Zimbabwe is a failed state. It is a failed state. One of the many reasons why we are a failed state is that we don't seem to learn from the past. We keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. We're not paying attention to detail. And it is said that those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. God knows how many times we have repeated the same mistakes over and over again. It is sickening. Right now, the nation is focusing on this so-called Geza revolution. Let's be clear what this is all about. In January, Geza and 4 of his fellow war veterans came out on a video that went viral, where Geza said in no uncertain terms that Mnangagwa and his regime, they are corrupt, incompetent, and they should go. Mnangagwa was at the time at the peak of his drive, the so-called ED 2030, where he was determined that he should stay in office beyond what should be his maximum fixed 2-term limit, which ends in 2028. He wanted to stay another 2 more years to 2030. His justification that he was doing such a good job of pushing the nation's development. This vision 2030, that Zimbabwe will attain the upper middle income status by 2030, in 5 years from now, if he stayed on and delivered on his development agenda. Everybody couldn't believe it. What development is he talking about? The country is a failed state, as I said at the beginning. This basic infrastructure, roads, power supply, water, sewage, everything have all but collapsed. Basic services like education and healthcare have all but collapsed. And here is the individual behind it who has got the cheek to claim that, no, I'm delivering an upper middle income status. It's a vision, and I'm delivering it. The man has been in power since the 2017 military coup when he took over from Mugabe. Before that, he was in Mugabe's government since the country's independence in 1980. Even if we forget about the period, the 37 years he was with Mugabe, he has been in power now 8 years. Things have not improved. If anything, things are getting worse. And so this whole delivering upper middle income status is just an outrage. And so when Blessed Geza came out and dismissed that as bullshit, it resonated with the whole nation. This is something that the whole nation has seen, but they did not dare to say out loud. And once it was out, you could not put the genie back in the bottle. So since January, the nation has been focusing on Mugabe must go. And a few days ago, Geza came out and said the D-Day is going to be the 31st of March. It was urging as many people as possible to come out in the street to demand that Mnangagwa should go. What has been of concern here is that we have been here before. In 2017, we had a military coup that forced Mugabe to go after 37 years in power. The people came out in their hundreds of thousands in support of the coup. What should be understood there is that the coup happened at a time when things were boiling over. The nation was getting absolutely restless for change. This cannot go on. But what also must be understood here is that the people should have had a clear vision of what is it they want. And in this particular case, it should have been, we want the dictatorship, the Zanu-PF dictatorship, the system itself dismantled. And I think many people thought that that's what they were getting. Unfortunately, it was not. The 2017 coup ended up being a process of putting out Mugabe and a few of those of his close friends around him, the G40 leaders, and he was replaced by Mnangagwa and his own crew. And some of the many Zanu-PF leaders were still in government. 8 years down the line, the nation has got to admit it. That coup did not bring any change. In fact, some people are now saying that it was jumping from the frying pan into the fire. Things got significantly worse. So it is natural that now we are at another stage where we are looking at this so-called 31st March uprising. What is it going to bring? It should not be a repeat of what happened after the 2017 military coup. It is interesting to note here that Geza himself addressed that point at one point. You can hear him admitting that is a very important point.
Can we be trusted? This is a question on the back of many people's minds. Because many, a time in Zimbabwe, we have seen hijacked revolutions. So it is genuine for you to ask, if this revolution is genuine, the answer is very simple. Very simple. As war veterans, what have we to gain through deceit? Nothing. We've reached the afternoon of our lives. We are not going to be alive for long. But if we die and leave this country under such tyrannic rule, we would have wasted our efforts. We won't do that, never again. We are doing this not for us, but for the future. The idea is to embrace every Zimbabwean, everyone without exception. This is not a fight for one party or one person, no. There will be no repeat of 2017. There is no chumuchedu in this space of this thing. It's ours together. Maybe what happened in 2017 was many, but it was said. Many of us invested money, personal resources to fund Operation Restore Legacy. We lost millions with the hope of restoring this country to a democracy, but little did we know that we were fighting for thieves. We are wiser and clever now.
It would be very tempting to believe Geza. And many people, I think, did believe him. But again, it is only because they're not paying attention to history. He is right in admitting that he and his fellow war veterans were behind the 2017 military coup. They were also behind the imposition of Mnangagwa then. And if the truth be told, they were also behind the imposition of Robert Gabriel Mugabe for the 37 years he was in power. Zimbabwe's fight for independence took a wrong turn a long time ago. When the nation was deciding on whether or not to wage an armed struggle, there is a rhetorical question that they should have asked themselves. And that is, what kind of leaders does an armed struggle throw up? And the follow-up, will those be the kind of men and women who would want to rule the country? Alas, in Zimbabwe, it appears nobody asked that question. And by 1980, we had the answer. The kind of leaders that our armed struggle threw up are the selfish individuals who only looking at power. And they want absolute power for themselves. They didn't care about the rights and freedoms and basic human rights of the ordinary people. They wanted power. When the nation was preparing for its first post-independent elections in 1980, Mugabe and his Zanu-PF colleagues made it very clear that if the party does not win the elections, the Bush War would continue. And guess what? The people voted to end the Bush War. They thought that would appease Mugabe and company. It did not. Because as soon as they got their legs under the table, they started scheming on how to consolidate their power. And what better way of doing it than creating a de facto one-party state? And so in 1983, they launched the now infamous Gukurahundi. The primary purpose of Gukurahundi was to coerce the late Dr. Joshua Ngomo and his PF SAPU friends to give up the party and join Zanu-PF. They finally did in 1987. After nearly 20,000 people were murdered in that Gukurahundi. And the signing of the Unity Accords paved the way for Mugabe to finally impose the de facto one-party state, which is what has ruled Zimbabwe up to this day. People like Geza played their part in that. They didn't care about the rights, basic fundamental rights of the individual. One man, one vote was thrown out of the window. That is the truth. Even this 31st March uprising, as much as Geza tried to assure the nation in the video clip I've just played that he was in the afternoon of his life and he was doing this purely to make sure that Zimbabwe became a democratic country. He was lying. Here is Geza speaking the truth.
Aiwaga. Mirani kutauri imwe zvinhu zvinoitika. Hani ndiri kutokutaurira. Kurauza kuti hatina kupusaka because ndiri kutokutaurira kuti tozviziva. You know, takapusaka ndisikakutauriri zvese. We'll deal with this situation at the appropriate time. But ndiri kutaura kuti commander vamunangagwa, right? Navachiwenga, handidi, right? Ngava dissolve policy bureau. Tikwane isu, varizive chunhu. Ngava dissolve cabinet. Inozinana kazembe, vana soda, vanani, havambozviutaga pane kupaniwa. Vana kambamura, vanani. You know, why do you hate your comrades? You know, kune general, kune retired CIO vakawanda, kune retired commissioners of police and other senior officers vakawanda. Havadiwe.
Maybe the president is looking at capacity and capability.
Bullshit. When I'm grade 7, I know capacity and capability. Grade 7. You know, what a beast you're going. Now I was Minister of State, Mangwana provincial minister. It's terrible. We are not apologetic about it. Children chedu toda kutopinda noda kuti president vanipozi mota varipochi toda mabodyguards in.
But you've got your own cars. You've got a hotel at your house that you built in Sanyat. Why do you want all this?
I want to be rewarded as well, not to be used like a political condom all the time. I'm not a political condom. And urikona vana mahiya vaya vana vamwe.
Well, we heard it from the horse's mouth. As much as he would want to pretend that this 31st March uprising is to restore democracy and good governance in the country, it is not. He thinks it is his turn to rule. He too wants to be a minister so that he can have big cars, he can have bodyguards, etc., etc. He may be in the afternoon of his life, but he still wants to make the most of it. So there cannot be any doubt that the 31st of March uprising, if it was successful, it will be a repeat of the 2017 military coup. In other words, we will remove one dictator and a few of his close friends to replace him with another dictator and his team. There can be no arguing that Chiwenga is a dictator. I mean, there are some things we can debate, but that is not one of them. Of course, Chiwenga is a dictator. He is corrupt. He is incompetent. And he has played his part in helping to establish the de facto one-party state. And has, along the way, collected his lion's share of the spoils of power. It is naive to think that he can now suddenly abandon all that. Ask yourself, if Chiwenga was to become president, and we have to go for the 2028 elections, or whenever it is, do you seriously think he will risk losing the presidency by holding free, fair, and credible elections? Of course not. He will do exactly what Mnangagwa did in 2018, rig the elections. And by the way, in 2018, Chiwenga was vice president. So he contested in those elections. And he knows that those elections were rigged. And he played his part in the rigging of those elections. He's not going to give up power that easily. But this is not the end of the story. As much as the 31st March uprising is going to be a repeat of the 2017 military coup, now it turns out that Chiwenga will most likely bring in the individuals who were booted out in the 2017 military coup, the G40s. Here is a video clip of somebody talking about one of the G40 members.
Ezimazimba, Masverase, Dinonzi Dr. Comrade Adamski Jahman. Now, I want to make this very clear so that everybody understands we are moving and we are moving forward. Whatever the pace, we are moving. We are on the go. If you read between the lines, you will understand what's happening behind the scenes. Majority of people are backing Geza. Comrade Geza is the only person to take on Emerson head on. And we all realize this. The real people realize this, and we know what's happening. I'll give you a good example. We have one of our best diplomatic representatives to ever come out of Zimbabwe, Dr. Walter Mzembi, in the UK right now, who was once placed on the sanctions list. He is here now. He is talking with the UK ambassador, meeting him in London. This is just a tip of the iceberg. It's something that you need to understand, that Zimbabwe is at a very crucial point right now, and it needs unity, despite whatever political party you follow. We are at a tipping point within the country because Emerson Mnangagwa has done nothing for us or for you that are in the country, and we are seeking better means, and we are fighting the corrupt government of Emerson Mnangagwa. My comrades, the time is now. The time is now. We are moving, and we are moving, and we are moving, and we are moving, and we are moving.
Yes, we are moving, but in what direction? I think one of the worst things that can happen here is for us to be repeating the same mistake over and over again, to the point of recycling those G40s leaders whom we know they were just as corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical. This is getting the nation nowhere. I think the people of Zimbabwe must wake up to the reality that this 31st March uprising is not going to get the country moving in the right direction. If anything at all, the 2017 military coup, the most important lesson we should have learned is that we should have remained focused on the demand to dismantle the dictatorship itself and not be content with swapping one dictator with another. We should realize what is going on here. Zanu-PF, whenever they find themselves in a situation where they know the regime is under enormous pressure, it fractures. Their internal factions fighting. One faction wants to stay in power, and the other one wants that faction to go so that they could take over. What they've been selling to the people is that we have changed, when in reality, that faction that is seeking to replace the faction that is in power, what they are seeking is that the people should help them to put pressure on the other faction so that they give up power and they can take over. Neither faction, as much as they hate each other, neither faction wants to dismantle the dictatorship itself. There is always a pool of Zanu-PF leaders and officials who stay neutral enough to stay in power after one faction has taken over. When the Lacoste faction took over in 2017, they inherited the party plus the pool of those people who, most of them, although they never got into high-ranking positions with the Lacoste, they still nonetheless maintained their position in the party. And some of them retained their influential positions too. And the present factional war that is taking place will see the similar thing happen again. Chiwenga will never dismantle the dictatorship. That is the reality. And in this particular case, it is clear that it's not only going to dismantle the dictatorship, it's going to recycle those G40 leaders who were booted out in the 2017 coup. We are not making any progress here. People like Xavier Kasukwere, Walter Mzembi, these are hardcore Zanu-PF thugs. We know them. They've got a track record. And now they're being rehabilitated and brought back. Do we seriously expect them to be helping in the rebuilding of a democratic Zimbabwe? No. They're just coming back so that they can take on the looting from where they left it off in 2017 when they were booted out of the country, or when the pressure was so much that some of them left the country and they've never returned. Others had to run away. They were lucky to escape with their lives. I think the people of Zimbabwe must learn from the past. This so-called 31st March uprising, as much as it will accelerate the removal of Mnangagwa, we must also accept that it will also give legitimacy to the faction of Zanu-PF that remains, and thus help perpetuate the dictatorship. It may have taken a year, maybe 2 years, to pressure Mugabe to go. And then we would have been able to implement the democratic reforms so that Zimbabwe would be a free, fair, and credible, will hold free, fair, and credible elections. We accepted what the coup leaders offered us. We'll get Mugabe out sooner for you if you give Lacoste faction legitimacy. And we accepted that. Now we are being offered a similar offer again. This time, the Chiwenga faction is offering to remove Mnangagwa. In return, we give that faction political legitimacy. They are going to bring in some of the recycled G40 thugs. How anyone can see that as progress beggars belief. We really are not learning from the past. And we are paying for it dearly. What is the solution? Well, it is very simple. You cannot keep on participating in a flawed process, which you know is flawed, which you know if you participate, you give legitimacy to the vote rigging Zanu-PF and perpetuate the dictatorship. As much as I agree that we do not have any control over the infighting in Zanu-PF, we at least should have the good sense to realize that there's nothing in it for us and stay out. We should have the patience to clarify our own position. What is it we want? We want the dictatorship dismantled, but we should not compromise on. An offer to remove Mnangagwa, if it comes at the price of giving the Chiwenga half of the Zanu-PF dictatorship legitimacy, then that is not a bargain at all. That is totally unacceptable. Think about it. Thank you very much, those who were able to join. Hope you'll be able to do it again in future. Have a good night.